Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. This is the last episode of our review for Tensura Light Novel Volume 8. In this episode, we will continue discussing the talks between Benimaru and the Tengu tribe, Hakuru's past, the completion of the underground labyrinth, and the introduction of the hero Masayuki. Let's get started. We've mentioned before, Benimaru, accompanied by all bees and a dozen guards, traveled to the hidden village of the Tengu tribe located in the Kusha Mountains. Entering through a cave, they were met with a sight to behold, a paradise filled with blooming flowers all year round and maintained at a comfortable temperature. Upon their arrival, a beautiful young girl greeted them. Her presence was as commanding as that of Demon Lord Carrion, whom Benimaru had met before. With caution, Benimaru conveyed his purpose for visiting, to secure a passage permit for the Monster Federation through the Kusha Mountains and possibly construct a tunnel within the mountain in the future. Hearing this, the Tengus showed obvious reservations. While the permit was tolerable, drilling a hole in the mountain, which they revered as sacred, was considered taboo. Momiji, the young girl, stood up from her seat in anger. She was already provoked by the presence of all bees, whom she found had the smell of a snake, and flatly rejected the idea of tunneling. As we mentioned before, the Tengu tribe, also known as the long-nosed tribe, doesn't actually have long noses but has an exceptional sense of smell. The atmosphere grew tense. Albiz, offended by the comment about her smell, stood up, prepared to confront Momiji directly. After a brief exchange, the tension escalated further. In a flash, swords were drawn. Momiji's fan was sent flying by a swift move. Before anyone could react, Benimaru intervened between the two. When Albiz was threatened by Momiji, Benimaru stepped in, signaling his unease. He was quick to apologize if his actions caused any upset, but it was clear he would not let any harm befall his friend. In that moment, the inner doors of the hall creaked open, revealing an elegant woman with pronounced dog-like ears. Young warriors immediately paid their respects. She was the esteemed elder of the Tengu tribe and Momiji's mother, Keed. In their brief exchange, Elder Keed acknowledged Benimaru's proficiency in the sword fighting, hinting that it might be influenced by the hazy style. Benimaru, having observed Momiji's techniques, had felt they shared a commonality in their approach to swordsmanship. A thought crossed his mind, which Keed soon confirmed. She too was acquainted with the hazy style, a heritage from her master, Araki Byakuya. Hearing the name Araki Byakuya, Benimaru showed a look of surprise. He also noticed that although Keed was the elder of the Tengu tribe, her magicule level was quite low. Keed had used all her magicules, even her life force, to give birth to Momiji and name her. To name numerous individuals without any repercussions, as Rimuru did, was certainly out of the ordinary. Noting Benimaru's surprised look, the elder, Keed, smiled with satisfaction. She began recounting a story from long ago. Around 300 years prior, she concealed her power and traveled extensively. During her journeys, she met a human named Byakuya and trained under him in the art of the sword. Back then, she had a fellow disciple, a prodigious talent loved by the sword, who was Byakuya's grandson and later known as the Ogre Swordsman. After Byakuya's passing, this swordsman's strength grew immensely, rivaling even Keed's. In terms of sheer skill, she admitted to being inferior to him. Yet, Keed was utterly captivated by his impeccable swordsmanship. Beneath a grand maple tree, Keed confessed her feelings to her fellow disciple. However, after a night of vows, she quietly left the Ogre tribe's village. In the unpredictable climate of the Jura forest, only that maple tree stood tall and robust. When autumn came, its leaves turned a beautiful red. Because it had become a symbol of the village, Benimaru was also familiar with that tree. For this reason, he did not doubt what Keed said.
Wait a moment.
Benimaru started.
So you're saying Momiji is Hakuru's?
Hakuru? So my senior disciple also got a name. This means I can be at ease. After all, the fine man raised by Hakuru will become my son-in-law.
Came the reply from Keed. Upon hearing this, the tea Benimaru had just sipped spewed out involuntarily. Nearby, Albiz was dumbfounded, dropping the soup she was drinking. Momiji, the one in question, blushed deeply, hastily trying to silence her mother, but Keed restrained her with a swift move. Later, Keed promised Benimaru that she would fully accept the proposal of Demon Lord Rimuru. She would further consider pledging allegiance to the Monster Federation, but only if Benimaru would become Momiji's partner. Uncertain of what to do, Benimaru decided to postpone his response and return to the Monster Federation overnight. The news naturally caused a stir among the Monster Federation executives. Even Hakuru was thrown off, remembering that many years ago, Keed had left him after spending a sweet night together. Now, being suddenly informed of having a daughter, Hakura panicked. While deciding to take responsibility, he was unsure how to handle the situation. Subsequently, Momiji, on behalf of the elders, came to the Monster Federation and the official meeting commenced. Unexpectedly, the talks went very smoothly. Rimuru promised that, under the premises of granting passage permissions and establishing tunnels, the Monster Federation would not invade Tengu territories and would assist in times of crisis if needed. The agreement was signed, but the meeting did not end. The issue of Hakuru, Momiji, and Benimaru remained unresolved. The room suddenly grew silent. Just as Rimuru was wondering how to break the silence, a young Tengu warrior handed over a letter from Elder Keed to Rimuru. It was addressed to Hakuru, advising him to guide Momiji to become a powerful individual and make her irresistible to Benimaru. Reading the signature, "For my beloved husband Keed," Hakuru laughed heartily. It was only then that Momiji realized the white-haired elderly man in front of her was her biological father. Confirming his identity, her eyes, similar to Hakuru's, moistened, and she rushed into Hakuru's embrace in an emotional reunion. On the other side of the hall, while Hakuru and Momiji were bonding, Benimaru was contemplating how to handle the situation with Momiji. He was initially inclined to reject her outright, but under Hakuru's scrutiny, he abandoned that idea. At that moment, Shuna suddenly turned to Benimaru, conveying a message from the beast-man Albiz. Albiz made it clear to Benimaru that he should be prepared, suggesting that even in the worst-case scenario, there was always the option of accepting her as a concubine, and she was determined not to give up. The surrounding guards began to buzz, and the executives eagerly discussed various gossip. Rimuru, inexperienced in matters of love, looked on indifferently, waiting for Benimaru's decision. However, for Benimaru, it was a serious matter to consider. Just as Momiji's mother had nearly exhausted all her magicules to give birth to her, for someone of his stature, conceiving a child would not be simple. Moreover, being pursued by two girls simultaneously was confusing for anyone. As the whispers died down, Benimaru came to a decision. He believed that for upper-level demons like themselves, procreation wasn't simple, and disputes often arose between partners regarding offspring. He had no interest in such complexities, firmly deciding that one partner was sufficient, and saw no need for a concubine. Momiji looked at him with sparkling eyes, indicating her acceptance of Albi's challenge, determined to become Benimaru's wife. Following this, drawing from his modern societal experience, Rimuru announced that the Monster Federation would adopt a monogamous system based on free love. From that day on, not only Momiji and Albiz, but other women who adored Benimaru also joined the fray, launching aggressive pursuits. Meanwhile, Rimuru, under the smiles of Shuna and Cheyenne, pondered future policies. Thus, the reception ceremony officially concluded. After quickly finishing dinner, Rimuru gathered all the executives in the meeting room to provide a recent update. Not only were all the executives present at this meeting, but even the Storm Dragon Veldora, Demon Lord Ramaris, and her subordinates were also in attendance. After briefly introducing the current Finance Minister Malmal, the meeting moved on to the introduction of the procedure of Founding Festival. The evening before the Founding Festival, a grand pre-festival will be held throughout the city, where various dishes will be provided free of charge to guests and adventurers. According to the plan, on the first day of the Founding Festival, the main event would begin. After breakfast, Rimuru would conduct the Demon Lord's coronation ceremony and deliver a speech for the inauguration of the Monster Federation. This would be followed by a martial arts tournament, an opera appreciation event, and a tech expo representing the Monster Federation, the highest level event of its kind on the continent. This would allow both nobles and commoners alike to appreciate the charm of the Monster Federation. By the third day of the national celebration, the long-anticipated underground labyrinth would be officially unveiled. Thanks to the efforts of Veldora and Ramrus, the labyrinth's internal structure and bosses had been augmented. Notably, apart from the regular bosses on the first 50 levels, the guardian of the 60th level would be Adelman. After being defeated by Shuna, Adelman considered Rimuru as his new god, serving him loyally. Levels 71 to 80 would be under the protection of Zijin and Ipito. Originally, these insect demons gathered honey for Rimuru. However, after Storm Dragon Veldora's training, they were transformed into skilled fighters, and serving as guardians in the underground labyrinth. As for the 90th level, it was guarded by Kamara, a nine-tailed fox. She was rescued by Rimuru following Clayman's defeat, and now stood as a formidable guardian in the labyrinth. With these settings, the labyrinth had been essentially completed, and what remains was to wait for the first batch of players to test it, and then make detailed modifications. At the end of the meeting, Suiai brought shocking news. The slave traders, a transnational criminal organization powerful enough to rival a small nation and once hidden in the world's shadows, was annihilated by the Lightspeed hero, Masayuki. This so-called strongest hero from the Western countries was on his way to the Monster Federation at this moment. Although he had claimed to be returning captured elf slaves, rumors had circulated in the Western countries that Masayuki aimed to subdue the Demon Lord. With the national festival already in progress, no one could predict Masayuki's next move. Upon hearing this, a trace of unease had filled Rimuru's heart. In order to prevent any escalation, Rimuru had decided to personally determine Masayuki's true intentions before acting. With everyone's concurrence, the meeting had concluded. The exciting founding festival is just around the corner. We will discuss this in detail in our coming reviews of Volume 9 of the novel. Now let me introduce the so-called strongest hero, Hanju Masayuki. Masayuki, much like Rimuru, wasn't native to this world but had been transported here by an unexpected twist of fate. At that point, he had been a 16-year-old introverted high schooler of mixed Russian and Japanese descent, with golden short hair. He had been quite popular in his school. On one particular day, after catching sight of a blue-haired woman in jeans, he found himself whisked away to this unfamiliar world within moments. Owing to his heightened consciousness, he had acquired a unique skill termed the Chosen One. This was a particularly perplexing skill, which not only allowed him to instantly subdue and recruit lower-level opponents, but also provided buffs like guaranteed group critical hits and group morale boosts. Additionally, this skill had the unique ability to make those around Masayuki interpret his words and actions in a favorable light. Relying on this skill, Masayuki had been unstoppable and had won every battle he faced. Take, for instance, the battle with the slave traders. Masayuki hadn't even lifted a finger on the battlefield. Relying on group critical hits and morale boosts, the fight had quickly ended in an absolute rout. Naturally, all the credit had been attributed to Masayuki. After that event, the title hero Masayuki had echoed in every corner of the Western nations. No one really knew the extent of Masayuki's true strength. After all, in most confrontations, adversaries had surrendered the moment Masayuki unsheathed his sword. Those who had witnessed the battles believed that Masayuki had attacked instantaneously. Consequently, many who didn't know the details considered Masayuki an entity so powerful it was beyond their comprehension, bestowing upon him the illustrious title of the Lightspeed Hero. Masayuki had been a significant presence in the book, often referred to as the King of Luck. Compared to Rimuru, he more closely resembled the archetype of the refreshing male lead commonly found in otherworldly adventure stories. We would delve deeper into this in our subsequent discussions. That's it for this video. Starting next time, we'll review the contents of Volume 9 of the novel. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and share. See you next time.